right, so for about 2 weeks now, I've been thinking about oxtails. That sounds so crazy. I haven't been thinking about them constantly. But what happened, I saw a random post on Facebook about oxtails, and I was like, oh, I should try to cook something. I've never cooked them before. I've had them several times. I'm not a fan of oxtails, but I decided I'm going to do them anyway. So started last night, so let's take you back to those clips, and then we'll pick up with today's work. So the first thing last night was making the marinade. I started by chopping some onions using my handy dandy food chopper. Makes everything much easier. After that, I chopped some scallions, put those in, broke down 4 cloves of garlic, dropped those in the pot. Here I'm adding some bay leaves. It said 2, but I had some small ones, so I ended up doing like 2.5 or 2 in a piece. Now I'm adding in some ketchup. I think it was 2 tablespoons of ketchup. And after the ketchup, adding some Worcestershire sauce. I think that was only 1 tablespoon. And then to that, I'm adding in some soy sauce, which was also just 1 tablespoon. Now I'm adding in some thyme. It said to add fresh thyme, but I wasn't sure if I was going to cook this or not, so I just decided to use what I had. And it said to add a whole bunch, so I did. I also added some red pepper flakes, and here I'm adding some paprika. The next step was to add the oxtails, but I wanted to wash them first, and I saw a video where someone was washing theirs with lime. So I decided to do the same thing, and that's just me washing it. Cold water and lime. Did that a few times, rinsed them a few times, and then I brought them back to the marinade and mixed them in. The last step last night was making room in the fridge and putting them in. This was early this morning, Saturday morning, so we'll pick up here. All right, so I'm going to heat up some oil. It said just enough to brown the oxtail, so that should be more than enough. So the recipe says to heat the oil until it's about smoking. The last time I did that, I was making that beef Wellington, and it was a disaster. So I'm not gonna let the let the oil get that hot, but I'll let it heat up and then I'll brown the oxtails. All right, so the oil is hot and popping too much. So let's turn this down. And I'm going to peel and do a rough chop of these carrots. I think the rest of the meat is done. Let's bring that over. Now I'm going to do the same with the tomato, just a rough chop. All right, clean up a bit and I'll be back. All right, so in addition to the carrots and tomatoes, I'm gonna add the marinade back in here. And I'm also gonna add in the beef broth. And I hope I've got enough. I'm gonna give this a stir. Alright, so this should be good. It says enough to cover it. All of it's not quite covered, but I think it'll still cook down alright. So I'm going to put the top on and plug it in. That might help. And then I'm going to set this for 7 hours, well 8 hours on low. And I'll be back later to check on it. It's been about 1 hour. I'm going to come and just give this a mix. Smells good. Alright, so about 2 hours left on this. It's cooked down. Smells really good. I think I'll enjoy the gravy over the rice more than I'll enjoy the actual meat. But I cooked it, so I'm going to eat it. Well, some of it anyway. It's time to add in the beans. The recipe only calls for 1 can. And I can't remember if it said to drain it or not. I'm just going to pour it all in there. Juices and all. Alright, and it also calls for the tomato paste. So let's open that. So it calls for 2 teaspoons. I'm just going to estimate. Well, not really estimate, but use just a regular spoon instead of a measuring spoon. Put that in there. Mix it in. And let's give this a taste so I can see what I need to add. Definitely some salt. Some pepper. Might as well add in the usuals, garlic powder. Onion powder. And let's give it a mix. Alright, so let's taste these oxtail first. Alright, pretty tender. Coming right off the bone. They should after 8 hours, 7 hours, something like that. Let's see. Not horrible. Good flavor. But like all the other oxtail dinners I've had, not a fan. I don't know. I think that picture of oxtails I saw on Facebook just looked so good I had to make some, but yeah, I'm taking these home to my parents. When I told my dad yesterday I was making some, I was like, ooh, what time is dinner? I said, if. So I didn't tell him the time, but they're decent enough to share, so I'm gonna take this home and eat, then take this home to them to have.